Hello, I'm Richard Murphy, and I want to talk about something that is really important, which is the need for a UK economic recovery plan of the type that we last saw in 1945. Now, it seems rather odd to be referencing the post-war period when we're talking about getting over coronavirus, but why not? This metaphor of the fact that we have gone through a traumatic event appears to be appropriate now. It isn't a war as such, but it has been something quite exceptional, beyond the imagination of virtually anyone alive, and quite exceptional in the sense that none of us have experienced this type of restriction on our freedom, this loss of earnings, this constraint upon what we are able to do as a consequence of what might reasonably be called an external enemy. Now, in 1945, the Labour government was elected actually against expectation, because of course Winston Churchill had led the government for the Conservatives through the war period. It was elected to change the way that society operated in reaction to the stress that it had been through. And let's be clear, that's exactly what we need now. I'm not saying we need to vote Labour. I'm saying, unless of course they adopt what I'm proposing, I'm saying we need the plan to recreate the UK after the stress we've been through. This now has been no minor stress. This has been a massive trauma. We have had well over 100,000 people die, and it's highly likely, I'm afraid to say, that many more will do so as yet. We don't know how long this is going to last as yet, and let's be clear, it's probably longer than we expect. But what we do know is that one day we will come out of this. And when we do, we have to be ready with plans to put our economy back on a different footing. We can't go back to the pre-COVID era, just as in 1945 the world could not go back to the 1939 era. That was not possible then. It is not possible now, because we have changed, we have learnt, and we have realised that we need to do things different. What do we need to do differently now? Well, first of all, it's become incredibly apparent how important the government is within our economy. Let's be blunt about it. Maybe 90% of UK businesses have called upon government support to survive during the course of the coronavirus crisis. Just think about that. 9 out of 10 have required support from the government. To therefore pretend that business has the answers to all problems in our society is wrong. I'm not saying there's anything bad with business. I've run more businesses than I've just about done anything else in my career. And I'm pleased about that, and absolutely have no shame at all for having done so. The point I'm making is they can only do so in cooperation with the government, who creates the level playing field on which they operate and the environment in which they can trade. And this environment has to be reinvigorated by the government. It needs to still inject the money that we require to keep those companies going. It will need to support employment as we keep going forward, because there'll be so many people who will be at risk of unemployment if that doesn't happen. We will need to support training, because we need new skills in our society. But more than that, we need to realise that many of the government-funded services on which we've depended have been critically short of funding and underinvested in over the last decade or so, since the last financial crisis in 2008. It's very notable that the new leader of the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, the employers' trade union, if you like, has recently said that the government failed after 2008 to provide the investment that was necessary to put the UK back on its feet after that crisis. It concentrated on balancing its books. It did not concentrate on what was required by the economy as a whole, and it failed as a consequence. Well, he was right. I agree with him. I have no shame, again, in saying I agree with the CBI. It is right to say that we need to now spend more. We need to spend more on the NHS. It's so clearly under-resourced. We need to spend more on social care. It so clearly has not been able to meet all the demands made on it. We've understood how vital education is in our society and how important it is that we support those who provide education for our children and young people. We need to improve services like the justice system, which has creaked to the point of almost breaking during the course of this crisis, and I could go on. We also realise that we need to invest in better technology, literally in this case, the technologies to beat pandemics, because we can't be sure that this is the last, and to meet the biggest crisis that we now face, which is the climate crisis, which if we do not address it, and very soon, because we have to be moving heavily towards net zero carbon by 2030 if we are to meet the overall net zero carbon target of 2050, then if we don't tackle that one, the whole basis on which we expect to have life, human life, here on Earth may be at threat. Now, this cannot be done by government alone, and this cannot be done by business alone, and this can't be done by individuals alone. What we need is literally a new consensus. There was a consensus after 1945, a consensus between political parties, as the Tories realised what Labour was doing was actually the bedrock on which they could build a better society. After all, they were in office from 1951 to 1964, and they did not undo Labour's work because they realised how important it was. That political consensus has to be created about the need to make these investments in the state, in the private sector, in people. And we needn't be shy of the spending. What we've also learned this time, as we did in the Second World War, is that money is available when we need it. The government can inject funds into the economy, and it can do so now using quantitative easing. But we also know that QE, which is what we short form quantitative easing to, QE creates new savings for those who are already wealthy in the economy. And that creates its own problems by creating inequality. We need to make sure we redirect the savings of people in society towards social goods so that pensions and ISAs and other tax incentivized investments, and 80% of all wealth in the UK is held in tax incentivized investments. Those funds are directed towards this social purpose, towards investing in the economy that we need. Can we do this? Well, of course we can. We did it in 1945. Are we ready to do this yet? I wish I could say we are. I believe, I'm afraid to say, that the crisis might have a little further to run yet before everyone on all sides of the political equation are persuaded. But will we get there? Look, if we don't, we're in deep trouble. So we have to get there. We have to understand that we need to represent people fairly. This might require parliamentary reform, proportional representation, a change to the House of Lords, a new relationship between the kingdoms that make up the United Kingdom and how we work together, whether as one unit or as separate organisations, separate countries even. And whatever that solution might be, there needs to be an understanding we are working for a joint common purpose between and across countries, between generations, between genders, between races, between ethnicities, between private and public sectors, all working for one common purpose, the well-being of us as a whole. Is that possible? I believe so. We need that new consensus, and we need it now. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in what I've been saying in this video, please subscribe. There is a button below the viewing screen. If you're interested in what I have to say on Twitter, I'm at Richard J. Murphy on that medium. If you want to look at my blog, that's taxresearch.org.uk. And we have a Facebook page as well, Richard J. Murphy. So one of those things will get you more information on what this video series is about, and I hope I'll see you again soon.